Hello high power owners, Mark Allen here for BH Spring Solutions. Today we're going to show you what it's like to install the BH Spring Solutions optimized high power springs. And this video is really not intended to teach you how to take all the different sub-assemblies down, although you may get some clarifications on that. We do want to say that if any high power owners who have any doubts about their ability to take down the high power and all of its different sub-assemblies should rely on a pistol smith or a gunsmith for the things that you're seeing done here. But what we're making this video for is to show you what it's like, a little bit about the experience of some of the changes you're going to see in your high power, what the BH Spring Solutions optimizing spring kits are like when you get them. Everything is organized for you in plastic bags, and on the back of your spring kit you're going to see a key for all of the different springs in the high power. The trigger assembly springs and the main spring are in their own separate bags. And so we're going to get started on taking this high power apart. This one has not had springs changed out in it in a long time. Okay, so we've got the grips removed. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do the basic takedown, and we're going to take the slide off. So we're down to the frame and we're down to the slide. First spring we're going to encounter is the recoil spring, and this particular recoil spring is an original equipment that was been in the gun for a long time. You're going to notice first off that the closing coil is not really a closing coil. This spring was just mainly cut right here at the end, and you can see how close this first coil, this cut end, is to that second coil. Let's take a look at the BH Spring Solutions recoil spring we're going to replace that out with. This is a 17-pound standard for a high power with standard pressure ammunition, and you can see the difference in the relaxed length of these two springs. And this one's ready for a replacement. So we're going to set that new recoil spring there and set that aside, take out the barrel. And the next thing we're going to do is we'll go ahead and take care of the slide springs next. And the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is take out the pin that holds the Sear lever in place. So we've got that, the little roll pin out. And this is a Mark III version. You guys with the Mark I version, you will not have this spring that I'm going for now. This version of the high power has the firing pin block safety, and it looks like a paddle on the end, and that is part of the drop safety. So we'll set that aside, and then if you've got that drop safety version, you've got an extra spring, and it's right here, and that's the Sear lever spring. We're going to get that out of there, and we'll go ahead and replace that out. I'm going to set that one aside in there. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to tap out. There's a little 1/16 pin here. We're going to go ahead and get to the extractor next. Get our extractor pin out of there. Now actually, this is not a bad thing. My extractor pin stayed in. It's far enough out to clear everything. I'm just going to leave that pin there. That's handy. That's easy. So we got the old extractor spring. We're going to set it aside here and out of the way. And we've got the extractor out. So now in our BH Spring Solutions kit, while we've got this extractor out, it would be an easy time, not fighting the drop safety, would be an easy time to go ahead and take out the firing pin. And this is the BH Spring Solutions firing pin retaining plate removal tool. And it's so easy because it helps you remove that retaining plate, firing pin, old firing pin spring out. But you'll get the firing pin spring that is best for your version and variation of high power. And then with the BH Spring Solutions firing pin retaining plate tool, this firing pin retaining plate tool replacement is as easy as what you just saw. And then the firing pin is replaced. We're going to go ahead and put the new extractor spring in, get the extractor relined back up. And this little pin can usually be tapped down with your plastic hammer like this, while we're tapping that pin right back out of there. There it goes. Now we'll give that pin just a little bit more to get it down flush. Now we've got a nice fresh extractor spring in there. Really good resistance. We want that extractor to be very, very hard on the end to push down with your thumb, and that one is really, really nice. Now this is not talked about very much with the high power, but this is a Sear lever spring. It goes under the Sear lever here in the slide, and the normal version of this spring is a really kind of a stiff spring. Well, that's relevant because this trigger bar pushes against this trigger lever that goes down in the slide here like this, and this trigger lever pushes on that trigger bar, and when it pushes on that trigger bar, the trigger bar is pushing against a spring. And this spring has been optimized in your BHSpringSolutions spring kit, and what it is designed to do is to create a little bit less resistance on this trigger bar when the trigger lever is pushing against it. That's going to be one ingredient of improving the trigger pull in this particular high power, but it's only one way that that's going to happen. But okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to tap in the Sear pin, and we'll have the slide assembly now with everything replaced, the extractor spring, the Sear lever spring, and the firing pin spring, and everything is now fresh. Now everything in the slide has been replaced out. We're going to go ahead and get into the frame next. Here we've got our safety lever spring, and we have our mag latch spring. We can go ahead and change that mag latch spring out relatively quickly. It takes a nice small screwdriver on the mag latch. You want to just press the mag latch button from one side. While you're pressing in, you're going to turn that a quarter turn counterclockwise. Out comes the mag latch spring. Now this particular spring is an interesting one too, because several different manufacturers used a couple of different versions of this spring, and we found that the Careens and the Arcuses had the most robust and convincing spring action in a high power, and that's standard in all of our kits now. And the reason for that is primarily this: it is a very, very smooth function spring, but it gives us maximum resistance on this magazine latch. And when the magazine latch then is reinstalled, we reverse it. We now go a quarter turn clockwise, and when I'm carrying, I have this side of the gun often in a inside the waistband holster pressed up against my body. I don't want too light of a resistance on this magazine latch spring, and when these springs get old, the resistance on your mag latch can get kind of squishy, and I don't want that ever inadvertently being able to be depressed. So keeping that spring healthy is real good for carry on the high power. We're going to go ahead and get into the rear part of the frame assembly now. We're going to tap out the pin that goes in the safety, and before I take that off, I do want you to hear one thing, and that is, you hear this safety. There's no real decisive click there when I'm doing that with my thumb. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and see if we can figure out why that safety doesn't have a definitive click sound when we're coming off safety and back to the fire position. So we're going to use the BHSpringSolutions third hand tool, hold the hammer back. This is really a handy tool for this part of the operation because you just push this sear pin out. Now, as you push this sear pin out, you want to hold the sear, because when you pull the punch back out, that's going to release the sear and the sear spring. So those both now can be set aside along with the sear pin. Now we're going to let the hammer on down, and out from the right side to the left, we're going to have our safety bar and our ejector and our hammer assembly. First thing we're going to take a little look at is this safety. It's got a little pin here. That pin will come out. Sometimes these can fly out when you are taking that safety out, but this one here is stuck. So we're going to, and looks like the spring did stay down inside, so it looks like we're going to have to dig the spring out. Wow, that spring's really stuck in there. We're going to have something to see here in a second. Okay, let's see what's going on here. I don't know if this will show up on the video or not, but if you can see this, this is a very, very small spring. It's only this large. But if you can see the end of this spring, you can see the end of this spring. The bottom coil here has collapsed, and it's laying down against the next coil, and it has spread itself out bigger than the other coils. This particular spring is kind of famous for that, and I want to show you a new, the same spring from BHSpringSolutions as a new spring, and I want you to see the difference in how this looks. It's actually even made, the closing coil on it on both ends, they're actually made it slightly differently than this spring was originally made. So we're going to install that new spring in our safety lever, and here in a few minutes we're going to find out if that makes any difference on that safety and the function and the decisiveness of it. Go ahead and put our little pin back down in there, and we'll set that aside for a moment. Now we have our mainspring. This is a very, very difficult spring to replace out. I'm going to go ahead and get our new mainspring out of our package here. In all BHSpringSolutions spring kits, you do have the new mainspring, and also there is a complimentary set of hex head grip screws, and those can be chosen with your kit in black or in stainless. And it's just something that we do. You can dress your gun up a little bit, but those are complimentary and standard in all of our kits. We'll get a chance to demonstrate our BHSpringSolutions mainspring tool here. Also, we want to get down around the second coil, seat those forks, and then we're just going to retract the hammer. The strut nut has to be tightened down just a little bit in order to go ahead and get there's a little pin right there. We got it removed. Now we can just remove the strut nut. Now we'll release the spring. Remove old spring, enter new spring. Okay, got our new mainspring. We're going to take and press our spring down just a little. Lock it in about the second coil down. We'll go ahead and compress that spring on down like this. Reinstall the strut nut. and our little pin here. And back the strut nut up to the pin, and we have replaced the main for part 2, and we're going to now reassemble the rear frame portion of this particular high power. And I'm going to start out by, we'll go ahead and get the hammer strut assembly seated where it needs to be set. Also going to go ahead and set the ejector. And once we've done that, we're going to be able to slide our safety lever with our new safety spring in there. And you get to this point, you know, you got a spring there behind that little tab. That third hand tool is a nice little way to push that in, and then we can seat the safety lever. Now we're going to grab that third hand tool again, because now we'll set our third hand tool, get our Sear spring and our Sear and our Sear pin. We'll go ahead and get those set back in. Set our Sear, the small side does go on the upward position here. I don't know about you guys, but that third hand tool is just an absolute godsend. That really does make this reassembly just that slick. And we are back together. Now we're going to drop the trigger out. One of the things that I found on removing the trigger, we're actually in the process of developing a mini press that will press this pin out. But for now, I like a piece of Gorilla Tape, an oversized pin punch, and then I take and put Gorilla Tape on the underneath side of the big end of the bigger pin punch. Put it right there on that pin. That is going to get that pin started far enough to where I can now get a good hit on it and drive that pin on out. Okay, everybody likes to talk about triggers in the high power. This high power is it does have the magazine disconnect installed. It's going to remain installed, but we're going to optimize it in the process that you're watching today. As soon as I get this trigger lever released, there we go. We can drop the trigger assembly out. By the way, while you're dropping that trigger lever out of there, the trigger lever was this piece that seats right in here like this. What you have to do is you have to push in on your magazine disconnect in order to get this to seat in there, and then once it is, now it's seated in there fine, but you have to push in on that magazine disconnect. So now we're going to go ahead and get the magazine disconnect out, and we're going to go ahead and get the trigger spring out as well. And by the way, while you're driving this first pin here that holds the magazine disconnect in, you do have to also at the same time give that magazine disconnect a little press in like that. So this is another spot that, you know, you could just about use a third hand, but I do have a luxury of a nice easy to work with pin there. Out comes our magazine disconnect spring. Now this is an optimized part of the BHSpringSolutions program. I want to this is intended to be a less aggressive magazine disconnect spring, so we're going to set that old one aside. What it's going to do is it's going to create less pressure against this magazine disconnect, which does push against the front of your magazine, and it scrubs up and down the front of the magazine. So we're going to talk about that as well, but we're going to first get our trigger return spring. on out of this trigger. So we got our old trigger return spring. The BHSpringSolutions spring kits all come with two different trigger return springs. And you'll notice the difference is in the center coils, and this is a heavier gauge spring wire in the 2 coil, and it's a lighter gauge spring wire in the 3 coil. But these are really two different springs. You can choose the one you like best. The 2 coil does create a bit more authority when the trigger is resetting. The 3 coil is intended to give you a lighter reset or a lighter take-up generally, and it will still give you a nice reset. In this particular high power, I'm going to go ahead and use the 3 coil spring. And we can go about the business here of reassembling the trigger parts. We'll set the new trigger return spring in its channel like that. And get our pin for that one. That pin is very friendly now. This is actually a gold-plated trigger, and that gold wears off, and these pins get very, very friendly. And that one is very nice to move in and out. It's actually covered by the frame when it's installed, so it does not matter that it's got a little that it's nice to me. Okay, we got our new magazine disconnect spring in, and so we're going to go ahead and get that installed and get our pin here from this other side tapped in. Nice. Okay, got our springs replaced here in the trigger assembly. We're ready to reinstall with trigger lever and the trigger bar pin, and it's tough to show you this operation here, but what has to happen is we have to get our trigger lever under the trigger return spring. Then we're going to depress on the magazine disconnect, set that trigger lever, and then we're going to position our trigger. Got our pin going. A little bit more to get that one flat, and we're there. Now, do you remember that safety lever? I still have to finish assembling the right side, but listen to that click. Now we have this real convincing, when it's on safe, it's really on safe. And when it is in the fire position, there is a definitive click, and there's some real nice resistance on this safety. This is not a mushy safety anymore. And that's important because I want a safety that's positively in its on-safe position or positively in the on-fire position. But that new spring in that little plunger of that safety pin that you saw there, that really made a difference. That you can hear that in that safety. So, okay, time to reassemble the everything else. We're going to go ahead and reinstall our grips. Coulda, shoulda went ahead and done this safety lever before I put the grips on, but it's not really going to make a world of difference here for us. What we want to do is hold that pin in position with a pin punch and come with our pin from the other side. Drive out the pin punch and a couple taps there on that Okay, one thing I did not mention is this magazine disconnect, which is right here. It's that face that you see right here. That's been polished with the BHSpringSolutions polishing compounds and polishing bobs. It was polished to a mirror-like finish. Then I blackened the front of it with a bluing pen. But now we have our new trigger return spring in there. It's a nice take up, very, very smooth. We're going to go ahead and reinstall our slide. I'm going to go ahead and put our barrel back together. New spring. Okay, we're going to function test this high power now that we've replaced out every spring in it. Boy, I like that safety. The mag latch has got nice resistance to it now. Of course, there's no ammunition in the room. We have a really nice trigger pull. The magazine disconnect, it's not doing too much against us on this trigger, and really nice trigger pull. Everything is very nice, very nice. That's a complete change out using optimizing springs from BHSpringSolutions for you. We're going to do some function firing of this high power next and see how everything works out. Good function.